Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. Today's guest is Wally Carmichael. I had the opportunity to meet Wally a little while ago, and actually a good friend of mine, Evan Money, connected him to Wally, and he got on his show, and then I've been on his show, and we've just been back and forth getting to know each other a lot. Wally has a show called Men of Abundance Podcast. And he's also got a pay it forward community. He's got a tremendous amount of experience in business. Also is former, he's been in the service. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But his whole passion is helping men live abundant lives. And so I'm really excited to share him with all of our listeners here and watchers that are out there watching us on video as well. And by the way, we're just launching that. So if you like video, please find us on YouTube, Leaders of Transformation, and we're loading up all the videos that we're doing, and so that you can actually watch us there if that's your preference. So Wally, welcome to Leaders of Transformation. We're excited that you're here today.
Nicole, I'm so excited to finally be here. Having a conversation with you for Men of Abundance was absolutely amazing, and then finally to be able to get onto your show and talk to you, Leaders of Transformation. Truly honored. The lineup that you've had, the people that you've talked to, and I'm going to be amongst those. I can't believe it. It's very honored. Thanks.
Well, it's a little similar with your show. Actually, when you said, hey, I'd like to have you on my show, Men of Abundance, I was like, wait a second. I don't think I qualify. But we had a great conversation, and you mentioned that you do have some women on that show as well. So for the ladies out there, definitely check it out. There's a lot of really great content. And you've had some pretty extraordinary guests. So tell us a little bit more about what drives you. What is your passion behind this? So you've got a podcast, you've got your community, and then of course you also have your regular day-to-day business. Give us more of an insight into who you are and what you're all about.
Yeah, so first and foremost, my passion is my family. I mean, that's above all, everything else truly is my family. But in addition to that, I also, as you mentioned, I was a service member. I was a Army medic for 25 years. I retired about 3 years ago after 25 years. And I just wanted to continue paying it forward. And I just love mentoring. I love coaching. I love sharing my experiences. I love experiences in themselves. And it just seemed like a perfect fit once I realized I was that guy chasing that 6 and 7 figure income for many, many years. I was even, I did everything from multi-level marketing to traditional businesses and everything trying to, make that money. And my wife was always like, what the hell are you chasing? Why are you after this? And finally, I just realized I was living a life of abundance. Started writing a book and realized the whole book was about myself. It was my story. I didn't want that. And I knew there were other amazing people out there living truly amazing lives and paying it forward. And they all have these kick in the gut moments. So I figured, well, how can I get these stories? And the most logical way for me, since I was just getting into podcasting, I decided I was going to start a podcast so I could build an audience to have a reason to talk to all these people. And my expectations have, just blown my mind, way exceeded my expectations.
Well, and it is a great platform because it's out there in so many ways on iTunes and all the different platforms. But it also gives your your guests a great soundbite that they can use. And you're in marketing and you understand too, it's like that ripple effect that goes out when you create valuable content. A book is great, but a podcast even has far more reach because it's literally hopefully on your guest's website and social media and all that. And so you can truly pay it forward with that through that experience. Now, you mentioned that you were an Army medic for 25 years. Let's talk about what that was like. What led you to do that and to choose that as a career? And maybe even like some of the lessons that you've learned. I know we've had some requests from some of our listeners to hear from people that have been in the service and how do they translate into the civilian, how do they translate those skills and experience into civilian life?
Yeah, so I had no desire whatsoever to join the military as a young man at all. I was going to college, ran out of money for college, gave up a scholarship. That's a whole different story. And then finally realized, because I didn't want to go to college at the time that I was offered the scholarship. And then I ended up going to the college that offered me the scholarship, paying for it, ran out of money, was working 2 full-time jobs, trying to make money to get back into college. I grew up in a very rough environment, and I knew I had to get out of that environment. So my uncle, who was a first sergeant at the time in the Army, he was home on leave, visiting my dad, and he had a conversation with me. And he said, hey, look, join the military, join the Army, whatever branch, but you'll get your education along the way and you'll be able to travel the world and get some experience. I was like, not no, but hell no. It's just not my thing. After a couple more months or so, it was rolling around in my head, working 2 full-time restaurant jobs. And if you ever worked the restaurant industry, it's a tough industry. And I walked into the recruiter's office and said, hey, I want to be an Army medic, because I was studying to be in physical therapy and in college. And they said, well, we don't have any slots for a medic, but you can be infantry, whatever. I said, no, thanks. I'm not doing that. By the time I got home, there was a message from a sergeant so-and-so and said, hey, 3 slots just opened up. So there I was. I joined the military, and I loved it from day one, from basic training, because what I realized was I didn't have much structure in my life growing up. I didn't have the discipline that I needed. My dad was like a friend and wasn't a father figure. Great man, can't say, just nice to a fault, but he wanted to be our friend. And in the environment, it just wasn't it's not a good relationship, father and son relationship at that age. I needed that discipline. So it just went on to 25 years. And to answer your question about the leadership, the leadership that we learn in the military, doing the things that we do. I've been to 23 countries on 5 continents. Some have been great experiences. Some have been experiences I'd rather not even talk about, quite frankly. But, taking that into the corporate world and taking that into the civilian life, it's the discipline. It's the knowing how to talk to people once we get the military kind of out of us and get the language, change the language to civilian language so that we can be more approachable to people. Because I've been told multiple times throughout my career that when people first introduced to me, I don't seem like a very approachable person because I have that NCO face. I don't look, so I have to work on that. But because you have to have that stern leadership in the military to really kind of, it's hard to explain. It's just not like we don't want to listen to what other people have to say, but it's spur of the moment type decisions. You just have to make decisions really quick. But it does translate very well into the civilian world. And I believe that a lot of our veterans underestimate themselves and undersell themselves when it comes to that transition. They let the civilian world dictate what leadership is, and they don't realize how much leadership skills they already have and how much organization skills and the ability to bring teams together. We just have an unbelievable ability to bring teams together for a common cause within an organization. And it's extremely powerful when it's done correctly.
Well, and it's funny because I'm in San Diego, and speaking of our servicemen and women, there's the jets flying overhead from Miramar over there. But
the sound of freedom.
Yes. Yes. Well, what's interesting, you talk about how it translates, especially like you being as an Army medic, you're in a crisis situation, right? You're handling, like you said, you got to make quick decisions. These are valuable skills, discipline. In the corporate world, for people to be successful, success is hard work. Mm-hmm. It takes work and effort. It takes being disciplined. It takes taking responsibility and ownership and initiative and stepping up and being the leader when that's what's required, and first leading themselves versus leading others. So you're right. Like those are all the skills, and they just need to be transferred and change some language and so forth. But I really do have a lot of respect for, and I've seen that a lot with people that have, when I've met people that have been in the service, and you meet them on the street or you meet them in some trainings or whatever, and they just have a different air about themselves because they have been trained. And I think that's a very valuable strength that they bring to the table. So you mentioned, you touched on it very briefly about your childhood and it being a bit rough. Tell us your story, the transformation story for you in terms of, like, I think you call it the kick in the gut moment for you. Was that when you were younger, or did that come later? Was it tied together? Give us a little bit more of the backstory to you, because I know that right now you're in Hawaii, you live in a beautiful place, you overlook the ocean, and you've got all this, like you said, I live a life of abundance now.
Mm-hmm.
But from my understanding is that you weren't always feeling that way. You didn't experience that.
Yeah. So, I grew up this is a true story. It sounds completely odd, but I grew up in a trailer behind another man's house. Couldn't even afford the trailer park. I mean, that was just when my parents were together. That was the situation. My dad installed carpet for a living. My mom always worked for like Motorola and companies like that, and hard worker. And she was always out of the house by 4:00 in the morning to catch a bus clear across town to be to work. And then she wasn't home when I got home, and my dad was always in and out of work. And I grew up in a part of Phoenix, Arizona, Southwest Phoenix, Arizona, where I joke about it, but the fact of the matter is I was minority. There were about 10% Caucasian and went to the high school I went to, Carl Hayden High School. And if any of your listeners, if any of you out there have ever seen the movie called Spare Parts with George Lopez, it's real quick. It's about a group of kids in a high school a high school group of kids who take on a robotics competition with like MIT and these college levels. And it's called Spare Parts because they literally use spare parts to put the robots together. They won this competition. Well, that school, I think they called it Carl Hayden Prep School or something like that in the movie, but it's Carl Hayden High School. It was all Hispanics. It was all gangbangers. That's the high school that I graduated from, and wouldn't change a thing. Did not want to go to that high school as a young white boy with long blonde hair growing up, but that was just my environment. So there was a lot of, there was drugs involved. There was a lot of, always fights, and it's not like LA type gang fights per se, but it was a pretty rough environment. And I just knew I did not want to continue on in that environment. Many of my friends at this age are either not with us any longer, wearing orange jumpsuits, or are out of prison now. And one of them's actually here in Hawaii for a year working that I've been reconnected with. And he's got his life back together. But the thing is the difference between them and I is, one, I got out of that environment, and two, I never got caught while I was in that environment where they did, because they went to jail doing some of the same stuff I did growing up. And I'm just fortunate that I had the foresight to make a decision to do something that I really wasn't excited about at first, as I already mentioned, but it's truly changed my life. And I was able to see the world, experience things that most people hardly ever experience, not just because of being in the military, but just traveling, because most people never leave their town, never leave their state, let alone leave the country. And I just think that the best experience you could possibly give yourself, best education you can give yourself and your kids, is to travel. But yeah, that's the basic backstory. I mean, there's a lot more involved in it, but that's the basics of it.
Well, I hear in that, there's a reason why you're developing this men of abundance concept, right? It's like living life of abundance, but also raising up men, encouraging men to be men. When I hear the story, you talk about your father with great respect, but like you said, he was a friend to you, and there's an element to, which is, it's great to be friends, but you need a father figure, and you need, and there is men to step up and lead and be, and of course women as well. So I hear in that, I know a lot of times our pain is where our purpose comes from, right? It stems from that, or a desire or something. Is that true for you as well? Is that what led you to be inspired to work with men in particular in this area?
Yeah, in a great part, that is exactly what happened. What originally, before I started Men of Abundance, one of the things I did on the side was I was a group fitness trainer, and I was led insanity classes and group classes, and 90%, if not 99%, if not 100% of the participants in my groups were women.
Really?
And then I started coaching a few on, here and there in fitness and nutrition. And then it started becoming kind of problematic, because ladies would start texting me, asking me, at various times of the day. And women have this amazing intuition. And they're like, this so-and-so is flirting with you, and I'm I'm not even, that's completely out of my mind. I'm just thinking this is a client type of thing. But it wasn't comfortable for my wife. And I just, when I decided, so I stopped doing that, quite frankly. So when I decided to start building this podcast to share my message and who I wanted to talk to, I decided at that point I want to talk to men. Partly because of that, but also because there are so many other groups out there for men, for women who are abused, for women who, various, all kinds of women's groups. But there's also groups for men, but they're alcoholics, they're recovering drug addicts, they're this, they're that. I wanted to talk to a group of men who are living, they have good lives. They don't have terrible lives, but they want to level up their life. They want to take it to the next level. They're already forward thinkers. They're not the type of guys who, are recovering alcoholics, so on and so forth. And some of them are, but the audience that I want to talk to are men who are doing the right things in life, but still not feeling like they're getting ahead, and they don't realize how much they have in their world and in their relationships, in their family, faith, and finances. And I wanted them, number one, to realize that. And by the way, as I always say, improve your foxhole. It's always good to improve your foxhole. The people say, well, you shouldn't want more. You should be happy with what you have. Yes, be happy with what you have on your way to becoming more and on your way to having more. So does that answer your question? That makes sense?
Yes, absolutely. And, you're right. A lot of these organizations and groups, they're defined by the problem or the addiction versus the opportunity. What you're talking about is, and men, and yeah, where do the men go that are, I was talking to somebody recently that works with some of the wealthiest families in the world and works with a lot of CEOs, done a lot of training over the years. I think he's trained over 1 million people. And what he said was very interesting, is that a lot of successful people, they do have challenges going on in their life. Like, they have a great life by many standards, but they have certain things in their life. And where did they go, right, to address the issues that they have? It doesn't have to be that it's addiction or anything like that, but there's some things like, where do they go to make improvements in the areas in their life where they need to make those improvements? Because a lot of times the people that are around them are all looking up to them, right? Or they're in positions of leadership. So they can't necessarily go to their, to that circle. They've got to go outside that circle and have a group of people that will support them in taking themselves, because you're either growing or dying. So,
right.
And I love what you said there about improving your foxhole. Some people were like, what does that mean? But to always be growing and I really appreciate, even you respecting your wife. I know and how she feels about that, and putting yourself in a position to win, even in your relationship. That speaks a lot of who you are. And because some guys would be like, yeah, we'll get over it, don't worry about it, or nothing will happen. But to not even put yourself in that position, I think, is important, so that you don't actually have to, you're not creating problems, to stem from that. So that's really, really awesome. So tell us a little bit more about some of the people that you have on your show, and even tell us a little bit about your Pay It Forward community. Like, what are some of the things that people can experience in there? This show is all about creating transformation, right? Leaders who are creating transformation. I know that you're transforming lives all the time. I see the testimonials that people have shared, and people that have been on your show that have been impacted by it. So tell us a little bit about that side of it.
Yeah. So first off, I get to meet people like Evan Money. I mean, my goodness, we're all like 1 degree of separation. It's unbelievable. After we sit down and talk, me and Evan had this conversation on the side and talking about all the people that we know, and then we get to connect with. And through this whole experience, I have truly been introduced to some amazing men and women. I mean, I've talked to the CEO of the Red Cross. I've talked to the former executive vice president of operations of Disney World Resorts, Lee Cockrell. I mean, I've talked to people that I would have never known about. I can't even think of some of the names right now just to bring up, but some folks some guys that are making, multi-million dollars, like Timothy Sykes, who used his bar mitzvah money to teach himself how to trade penny stocks, and wrote $1 million check to Pencils of Promise. And then, oh, by the way, went and helped Pencils of Promise build schools around in developing countries. I got a chance to talk to you, which was just amazing. And I get something from every one of these conversations. And, when I have a conversation scheduled, not every day, even though I live in Hawaii, I live in paradise, not every day is perfect. And there's some days I just feel, man, I just feel down on myself for whatever reason. We all go through it. And then I have one of these conversations and I'm just completely lifted up just by that conversation. And then somebody will contact me and say, Wally, like yesterday, man, that episode that you threw out yesterday was freaking amazing. It was right on time where I'm at in my life. And it really put me on track. Thanks so much for sharing that conversation and just keep doing what you're doing. And then that really, my emotions just go through the roof. I just can't explain what it's done for me. And then at the same time, I said I was going to get to 100 episodes or 100 conversations before I start writing my book, Living Your Life of Abundance. And as of this morning, I've got 194. Now, some of those are my Pay It Forward episodes that I do. I Pay It Forward Aloha Friday. It's just me talking, but I think I've got more than enough stories to write that book. I've actually got 2 other books coming out before that one here shortly.
Wow.
That just kind of manifested because of my marketing side of who I am. But the book's going to come. I got to get that book done and get it written. It's just inside me and it's screaming to get out.
So you're going to talk about living a life of abundance. What does it take? But people are listening out there and going, well, that's good for you, right? I'm glad you live in Hawaii and have this wonderful life and get to talk to these amazing people, but my life sucks. Yeah. Or it's okay. Like you were saying, it's okay, but I want it to be better. I wouldn't necessarily say it's abundant. Yeah. What are some of the tips that you would give our listeners on how they can step into that life of abundance?
First and foremost, I will tell you that if you're listening to this right now or you're watching this on YouTube, you are in fact living a life of abundance. You have more abundance in your life than you can even imagine. And I take abundance not from a spiritual level, which is there, but also from data-driven and proof. One of the first guys, when I started this life of abundance and I started thinking about abundance, I started researching more and more to make sure I was on the right track as far as what my mindset was thinking. And I ran into a guy by the name of Peter Diamandis who wrote the book Abundance. And that book, I've got right here on my shelf, and I've also got the audio, is all data-driven about how much abundance is in this world and how it's being misdistributed, how we can distribute it properly. So I'm not going to just get that book. It'll blow your mind. But first and foremost, I want you to understand that you have abundance in your life today. Be grateful for the abundance that you have in your life today. Once I made that realization when I was sitting on the beach on the west side of Oahu, watching my son playing in the water, had a cup of coffee, my wife in the house with my other boys, and it was like literally within a couple days, so much more started coming into my life because I just opened up and realized, damn, I've got everything in my life that I need. I've got more stuff than I want, I'm living a life. And by the way I got to Hawaii, I was in a tent, sleeping in my cot or laying in my cot. I had a mosquito net. I'm in Albania. And I got a mosquito net, and I got the picture of my family, and I got a picture of Hawaii, and I got a picture of a fish tank, this really big saltwater fish tank that I still don't have, but one day it'll come. And it's all right there. And I'm looking at it. I'm laying up, and I got it pasted, kind of pinned to the top of my mosquito net. And I just looked at that every day for about 3 months when I was in Albania. And I just wanted to visit. That's all I wanted to do. A couple of years later, I get a call from my branch manager in the Army and says, hey, you want to go do this job in Hawaii for 3 years? I was like, well, heck yeah, And then I did that for 3 years, left for 3 years, and then had an opportunity to come back again for 3 years. So I've lived in Hawaii for a total of 10 years. And that all manifested because I put it on my I actually put the date on my calendar when I wanted to visit Hawaii. Ironically enough, the month that I ended up living in Hawaii was the date that I wanted to visit Hawaii. So I tell people all the time, If there's something you want to do, put it on the calendar. Don't worry about how it's going to happen. Just be intentional about when you want that to happen. And it's, I can't explain it. It just manifests.
Clear intentions. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
clear
also looked at
intentions.
it all the time. It wasn't just a
it was right in
one-time
front of me.
thing all the time. Yeah.
The reticulating activating system, the RAS. We talk about all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, because even stepping back to knowing that you don't have to be living in Hawaii because I know I can almost hear, people are saying, well, it's nice, you're on the beach, you're seeing your wife, your kids, all this kind of stuff. It's nice to look around and say, wow, I feel abundant in that moment. But you felt abundant, and you're grateful, like along the way. When you're in Albania and you're sitting there and you're picturing abundance, what that looks like to you, you're surrounding yourself. I mean, we are a product of our environment. And so whatever we picture, and yeah, I really do believe in being grateful for what we have. If we're not grateful for what we have, why would God, the universe, the life give us any more than that? So
and it all comes down to our language as well. One of the biggest things that I end up talking with guys that contact me, and you described the guy perfectly when you were talking earlier about, people that on the outside, everybody looks at him and this guy's got his stuff put together. He's really got it going on, and everybody's looking to that individual for advice. But then there's stuff in their personal lives that aren't quite there. They don't feel worthy of what they have, or they don't feel worthy of their spouse or even their kids sometimes. And that part is where they really need help. And when I start having a conversation, I just ask questions. And I want to hear how they talk. And a lot of it is in the language. Somebody wants to get out of debt. I want to get out of debt. Well, first off, stop saying I want to get out of debt, because you're putting yourself in debt by saying that you want to get out of debt, because you're using the word debt. Say I want to have $10,000 in the bank. There's this date that I'm putting on the calendar that I'm going to have $10,000 in the bank, which translates into, if you have $10,000 in the bank, chances are you probably have no more debt, credit card debt, that is. I wouldn't, home, your house and your vehicle, stuff like that. But the credit card debt is what's so dangerous. And I'm just using this as one example. I want to, I'm tired of being fat. I'm tired of being unhealthy. Change your words, change the way you talk to yourself. We always talk to ourselves every day, all day. When you're more intentional and you use the word more intentional about how you talk to yourself, instead of saying, I'm tired of being fat, I'm tired of being out of shape, I'm tired of being unhealthy, say, first off, I love that I'm able to walk. I love that I'm able to, have a conversation with my children, have a conversation with my spouse. I love who I am. But again, going back to improving the foxhole, there's room for improvement. So what do we got to do to get healthy? What do we got to do to be our ideal weight? And I don't get too involved in weight anyway. That's a whole different conversation with the body composition. But just an idea of changing how you're talking to yourself is part of this whole abundance mentality as well, as opposed to the scarcity mentality, where so many people think, if I put this out there, I've got this great idea and I put it out there on a podcast or whatever, somebody's going to steal my idea. Well, chances are somebody will copy your idea, but they can't copy you. Yeah. So you're using the scarcity mindset as opposed to the abundance mindset, saying, I got to get this message out there. And by getting the message out there, what has happened for me with my podcast? I put the message out there. I started sharing it. Now I get more people contacting me to be on the show than I can handle. And I'm sure you do as well. Just way more. I seriously cannot handle. I'm booked out all the way into July. And even the shows are. So because I put it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So changing our words, changing the things that we say to ourselves, changing what we focus on. That's another one. What are some of the, how is that translated into, even those actions that we take? What are some of the things that you encourage your guys to do if they're in that position? What are some practical, their daily habits? Maybe it's, are there some practical habits that you encourage them to do? To what extent do you really mentor the men that are in your community, and maybe give us a little taste of what that looks like? And, there might be some men that are listening. They're saying, wow, you know what, that resonates with me. I think I might need to connect into this group. It's called pay it forward. So there's also the paying it forward and serving and giving back as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first off, I'm never going to come off as if I'm the subject matter expert and I know everything there is to know about living a life of abundance and fixing all your problems and getting you to where you want to be in life. So what I do in many cases is I refer guys to many books that I've read. Hal Elrod, the Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, co-written with Cameron Harold, who was a guest on my show as well. And as far as taking action, one of the biggest things that I have guys do that really makes a big difference in people's lives, the reason why I brought up the Miracle Morning is because to have a morning routine. And that's one big action step that most people, they just kind of crawl out of bed. They are late to work because they don't have a plan, and they're pissed off at and cursing the traffic, and it's the traffic's fault that I was late for work, when all you really had to do is just maybe get up 15 minutes earlier and be intentional about, not even get up earlier, just be intentional about your morning. And the morning starts the night prior. If you're going to work out, which I highly recommend, laying out your workout clothes, putting your shoes where they're at. Because if you're like me, I get up in the morning, everybody else still in bed. I'm walking through the house in the dark. I'm grabbing this and that. I know where everything's at, type of thing. But just be intentional with the things you do. Be intentional with your relationships. This is huge because I have these conversations more about relationships than anything. Don't be haphazard about, for instance, date night. Well, what are we going to do for date? Don't think of it that day or that minute. What are we doing tonight for date night? No, guys, take control of this. I'm talking to you guys specifically. It's my belief. Take control of this and be intentional. I love to just do something. I like spontaneity, but sometimes being spontaneous means being spontaneous for your spouse, but it takes some planning for you to do that. So if you're going to plan like a day spa for the both of you, or it doesn't even have to be that extravagant, go out, get a plate lunch, which we call out here in Hawaii. Go get a plate lunch and go to a park and just sit in the park and eat your meal and talk. That is extremely powerful. Be intentional about the things that you do with your children. Date your children. Date them one at a time.
I love that.
Just give the one child your full day of activities, whatever they want to do, not what you want to do, what they want to do. And God forbid, if they want to go roller skating, figure it out. If you've never been roller skating, figure it out. Be there with them. If you want to play some game that you're not into, figure it out. It's about them. It's about spending that time together. These are the little things that seem so, and you're thinking, wow, that's pretty simple. Why didn't I think of that? Hey, so that's what these groups are for. That's what these men's and women's and various groups are for, to get you around the type of people that are forward thinkers, that want to do better in their life, their business, their relationships. And they have all these amazing ideas that you can learn from somebody else. Guys have this problem that they think they have to come off as knowing everything. And guys, you don't. You don't have to come off as knowing everything. Nobody cares. They like when you ask a favor of somebody else, or ask, hey, I've got this issue going on in my relationship or with my kids. I just want to really talk about it. Not even looking for solutions. I just want to talk about it. And through you talking about it, the cool thing about it is you generally come up with your own solution just by getting it off your chest and freeing your mind to that. So kind of go on babbling on a little bit there, but I'm so passionate about this that I just see so many guys with these macho mentalities, and we really just need to get back into groups, because that's where we originated. We originated in groups and tribes, and we've gotten so far away from that in these urban communities that we have our next door neighbors that we say, hey, Tom, how you doing? How's your weekend? Yeah, great. I'm going back into my house now. Thanks for letting me borrow those shears for the hedges and stuff. And that's about it. Guys get together and talk about, they might get together and they're watching a football game, but there's no real connection going on. And the guys that I'm connecting with, I'm in 3 other mastermind groups with 3 other groups of men, multiple groups of men. And I'm always learning from other guys that are higher level than I am. If you're the smartest man in the room, then you're in the wrong room. That's my mentality on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I was kind of smiling there when you said about date night. I love spontaneity, but sometimes that does take planning, because it's like, oh, that would be really great if we did that. oh, too bad we didn't think about that earlier because, it's
Tickets
booked
are sold
up
out.
or
Yeah.
sold out, or it's too
Mm-hmm.
far away now. If we were to get there, we're going to be late or whatever
Mm-hmm.
the case is. And there's nothing like, and I know that relationships now are not all just male, female these days, but,
Mm-hmm.
taking that traditional, look at it is nice, because that's the only one that I can really know and speak to personally. It is nice to know that, it allows us not to have to, if we don't have to plan, guys, like, if the guy plans it and like my husband plans it, it just allows me to relax and I don't have to go into that focused, planning, structured mode, and I can just have fun and be me. And so it creates that balance. And so I really appreciate that. And even just being intentional about it, having the time that you spend, especially when people have kids and it's like the kids always come first. And then they, when they eventually end up going to college, going off to school, and then they're looking at each other. And I don't know how many times I've had people tell me that. It's like they get to the point where they go, wow, like, who are you? Like we haven't spent any time. And that's not an abundant life. And so along the way, it's not waiting. And I think there's actually a really great point in this is don't wait until this point when you've achieved all of these goals. What I'm hearing and what you're saying is enjoy the journey and find the ways that you can, experience abundance right now. Not only see it, what's already around you, but create it. What you want to have created right now, rather than waiting till one day when this happens. I mean, how many times have you heard that, right? Well,
Yeah.
When the kids grow up or when the kids get off for the summertime, then we're going to go and have time together. Or when the kids go back to school, then we're going to go do this. Or when we go on that vacation, it's always when something else is going to, it's an outside force that is actually determining the level of abundance. And that's not the way it is. I mean, bottom line, we choose it every single day. And it's abundance to me is like a state of mind first, before anything else. So I love what you're sharing there, Wally. So, okay. So you also, I want to shift gears here for a moment so that people do know. So you've got your podcast, you've got your community. You're also in business. You're a business owner, entrepreneur, and you work with small business owners. And so tell us a little bit about that. And so that, I know you have also a gift that you want to give away that applies to that as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, this is something that just kind of came about because of over the years, I've started many different businesses and I've worked a lot around different business owners. And as it turns out, it was pointed out to me actually that, somebody again, one of these groups pointed out to me and said, who's your number one clientele? Who are the people? What do they do that are contacting you? And many of them, 90% or more, are entrepreneurs because they're the ones willing to pay for services to improve their business and and sometimes they realize, well, I got to stop trying to improve my business as much as my personal life. And by improving their personal life, then their business improves. And this goes the same for your vocation and your job and everything else as well. And so I started looking at, well, what are the biggest issues that these guys are having? Well, as we had a conversation pre-show, chiropractors, doctors, plumbers, contractors, they're excellent at what they do. Excellent. They're very good at what they do, and they love what they do for their patients and their clients and their customers. They suck at marketing. They suck at telling their story. And what they're trying to do is they're telling their story like everybody, like their competitors are, a bunch of platitudes. We've been in business since 1408 BC. We're the best in the world. So I've seen advertisements that said we're the best in the universe. What's that mean exactly? So that's where I come in and I help these guys realize what is their unique selling point. But many of them have a unique selling point, but how does that translate in the market? Because it doesn't always, just because you have a unique selling point doesn't mean that the market's ready to buy right now. And one of the things that I learned through this whole process is for any business, the person, the customer or the client that's ready to purchase right now, those now buyers only make up 1% of all your customers over the course of your business. All those others are the ones that you need to get in that will come along later. And all they're looking for is information. So I've set up a program. I've got a program set up. There's an e-learning program that I've got attached to that as well. Amazing platform with just step by step on exactly how to set this up. But oh, by the way, I also take it a step further with group training and with one-on-one coaching for specific businesses that are ready to really take their business to the next level, and kind of dominate their industry, at least in their local area, because I really focus on those industries that are in their local area. And the gift that I have, you want to bring that up now?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So the gift that I have is for those small and medium-sized business owners that, you're doing well, but you can use more clientele. You can use more leads, because everybody wants leads. Leads eventually, and I show you how to convert more leads into paying customers and ongoing paying customers. So what I really want to do is, in the process of writing my next book, I really just need more case studies. So I'm looking for different industries to talk to share my platform and to share my process, see what you think of it and how it would work out in your industry. And then if we end up working together, great. But what I really want is I want to get the case study from our conversation and then use that in the book, and also write articles as well for various coaching magazines and whatnot. And I may use it for one of the articles, or I may use it for the book. So to get access to that, or get access to me so that we can get on each other's calendar, what I'd like for you to do is go to apmasterycoach.com/LOT. And I'll share the links with you and everything, Nicole, so you have all that. And then just kind of see what I have going on over there at that page, and let's connect so I can find out. I'm really interested in finding out what you think about how the platform and how the process would work in your industry. It may be an industry I haven't worked in yet.
I love that. And thank you. It's a different approach, is to say, hey, you know what? I actually want to learn. I want to test this. I love what you're doing is you're testing it and getting the case studies. Now, so what are some of the industries that you haven't worked in that you would like to get case studies for that would help? And of course, the outcome from this is that you want to be able to empower these entrepreneurs to be able to be more effective. So, I mean, somebody becomes a chiropractor, they want to make a difference. They want to help people. And so for those of you that are listening out there that may be thinking, well, where does this have to do with Leaders of Transformation? It has everything to do with it, because that's what you do. You actually do it in your sleep. You're like constantly paying it forward and saying, how can we empower people? How can we build a better mousetrap, so to speak, and and create it so that people can actually get the results that they want, have the abundant life. So that's the context of it. But so what are some of the industries that you haven't worked in that would be kind of interesting? I mean, there's unlimited amount of industries, but ones that kind of jump up in your mind, who knows, maybe there will be some specific, how it is, right? You go to B&I and business networking groups and referral groups, and anybody who says anyone who, it's like you're talking to everybody in marketing. If you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. So, maybe list a few industries and people can say, oh, I know someone, or I'm in that industry, and it can kind of direct that a little bit more for them.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, because one, I'll mention a few industries that I really like working in, but also just because I've worked in that industry, I'm primarily focusing in Hawaii right now, but I also live between Hawaii and Florida. And like you said, there are just endless amount of industries down there. And I can use, even though I've worked with an industry in Hawaii, the way we structure your marketing and mindset will be different from Hawaii to Florida. Because of various reasons, different market, different demographics, different type of people you're talking to. So some of the industries that I'd really like to work with are financial industries.
Okay.
I would love to. I'd love to do a joint venture with business brokers in various areas, because you have business owners that are coming to you saying, hey, I want to sell my business. And you're looking at their business going, this business isn't worth the paper it's written on. It's just not. That's when you introduce them to me, and I help them get their business to where it will be marketable, because part of my plan is, after each one of the strategies, I show them how their business has just increased in profit to be sold. And then that company could go back to you as the business broker, and it would be positioned in a place to sell. And they would use you, obviously, because they've already been working with you. You referred them to me. If I'm talking to any of the business brokers out there, and I know there are many, that we can do a joint venture and we can work together on that. I think I mentioned financial planners, any sort of professional business like accountants. Well, let me tell you about accountants. Accountants are interesting because accountants are like business brokers in that they have customers that they can refer to me, because many of their customers that they work with, tax planners and whatnot that they do every year, their business isn't making the money that they would like for it to, so that they can refer their customers to me. Accountants are interesting because many of them don't want more business. They have a lifestyle that they love. They are the business in many cases. Mm-hmm. So like my accountant, he can hardly handle any more business throughout the year. And I send him referrals. He basically says, I'm good, brother. I appreciate it, but I'm good. They like their lifestyle. They like to work with the amount of people they work with and then go on vacation. Right. Which he does. And he's out here in Hawaii and he goes on vacation. Yeah, accountants are very interesting, but there are some out there that they're just getting started or whatever. They relocated. And I know they do a lot of stuff virtual, but they do need more clients. So yeah, accountants could fit into that category, but many of the accountants I've talked to, they're good. They don't want a whole lot more business, but doctors' offices, private doctors' offices, plastic surgeons. Oh my goodness, amazing people, but their marketing. There's one story that one of my fellow coaches, because we're in it's a network of coaches that we do much of the stuff. We all collaborate just like the other masterminds. And I get to tell this really interesting story about this one plastic surgeon. He was doing mommy makeovers, but he was in Mexico, and he was wanting the ladies to get onto video so that they could do a video consult instead of actually traveling to Mexico. You know how creepy that sounds? I'm going to get on a video with a doctor in Mexico just randomly. So the coach, we restructured his way he was talking and the way he was coming off, and it just skyrocketed his business because he was wondering why he wasn't getting much business, even though and this is a surgeon that like sits on the board of surgeons. Wow. He is like a consultant. He just happens to be in Mexico. Yeah. So it seemed kind of shady to most people coming, most clients Googling and, because they're not known. Searching. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just the way that you're telling your story and talking to your customer that we really mastered, and really helping out a lot of small businesses. I love working with small and medium-sized businesses in general, just because they're the lifeblood of our country, of any country for that matter. They're the lifeblood of our economy. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great. That gives us a good indication of who to recommend to, and this is what you were talking about. You're looking for case studies to run through your process, mm-hmm. so that you can write your book and create a great impact through that. So Wally, thank you so much for spending a little time here and sharing a little bit about your life and what you're passionate about, and how you're making a difference in the world. We really appreciate it. Thank you. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. Aloha. Yes, thank you, and aloha. And for the listeners, we're going to make sure all of the links are there to your podcast, and make sure that they can connect to the. So that is Men of Abundance. What is it? menofabundance.com is the website, and then we'll also we'll make sure that the link to your gift is there and everything, so that they can get access to that and reach out to you if they're interested in learning more about that. And that's awesome. So thank you. And for those of you that are listening out there that are going, okay, where do we go from here? I believe in taking action. Transformation doesn't happen without taking action. Take something, that you learned from Wally. Maybe it's mindset. Maybe it's the process that he went through in his own life, right? From deciding what he wanted to have his life to be like, where he wanted to live. And even just taking that picture, cutting it out, and putting it on the, it's not going to be a mosquito trap or whatever, but it's going to be, in your bedroom. It's going to be on your mirror or wherever, take that picture and focus on it. Focus on what you want. Get clear on what you want first, and then focus on it, and change your language, change your focus. And I love what Tony Robbins says. He says, change your focus, change your state, change your words,
and it shifts your experience and life experience. And that's really, how you go and create a life of abundance, which is what we've been talking about. So I encourage you to do that today. And we appreciate you being here. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.